In this video, we're going to talk about the University of Chicago, the pros, the cons, and how to get in. The University of Chicago is a very prestigious, mid-sized private university, and it's located in the Hyde Park section of Chicago. It's really known for several factors. First, for its hyper-intellectual atmosphere. So this is a place where students outside of classroom, in the dining hall, in the dorm rooms, love to discuss intellectual topics with each other. It's also known for its very rigorous academics. So this is a place where there's a lot of grade deflation. Courses are extremely hard. There's a lot of coursework, and most students spend most of their time in the library studying. And finally, it's a place that's known for its quirky student body. So this is a place that really thrives on attracting quote-unquote weird students, geeky students, students who kind of are eccentric brainiacs who really geek out on obscure topics. A key thing to know about UChicago is it has a very prominent core curriculum. And what that means is that in order to graduate, you have to complete a very substantial set of core courses that pretty much everyone else around you will be taking as well. And while you have a little bit of flexibility in precisely what courses you take, pretty much all the undergrads at UChicago will be taking the same set of courses. And these give you a really strong foundation in Western thought, philosophy, government, art, history, all those kinds of things. And students have a love-hate relationship with the core curriculum. On the one hand, they love the fact that all the students are basically taking the same courses. So outside of class, you can have conversations with your dorm mates or people in the dining hall about these topics because you're all studying the same thing. And it also makes you a much better thinker and a much better writer. So a lot of students say that once they graduate from University of Chicago and they go to graduate school somewhere, the work is relatively easy. Like, that's how hard it is. But the con about the core curriculum is that it takes up so much of your time. So you can expect that the core classes will take up at least a third of your time on campus. And that means you don't have a lot of freedom to experiment in different types of classes, because you're going to have your major requirement and everything you need to complete your major, and then you're going to have to complete the common core. So there aren't a lot of spots left over to just take random electives that might interest you. And this is very similar to the core curriculum at Columbia, which has the same kind of prominence, and it's just as difficult. And it's the opposite of what it would be like to go to Brown University, because at Brown there's no core curriculum at all. You could take whatever classes you want. What are some of the pros of University of Chicago? Well, the first is that it has a world-class economics program. And this puts it on par with the undergraduate economics programs at Harvard and Stanford and UPenn. It's that good. And what's different is that at UChicago, the economics program is a bit more theoretical. A lot of students who major in economics, and by the way, UChicago has more econ majors than any other major, but a lot of students who major in economics, they actually go on to graduate school and they become professors. So it has that more of an academic theoretical bent than some of those other schools. But there's actually a new major at UChicago called the Business Economics major, which is a bit more practical. It's much more an MBA program, and it's much more career-oriented. But not only is the UChicago Econ program highly regarded, but it has probably the most famous economics professors in the world. It has more Nobel Prize-winning economists than any other university. And like the guy who wrote Freakonomics, Stephen Levitt, he's a professor there. So, and also it's attached to the MBA program, the Booth School of Business, which is one of the top MBA programs in the country. So if you're at all interested in economics, UChicago has one of the very best programs. Another pro is that you're 20 minutes from downtown Chicago. Chicago is a very vibrant city. It has a lot of cultural opportunities, has a lot of entertainment options. There's great restaurants. Also has a lot of major companies that work there. So if you want to do internships or you're looking to network for jobs, Chicago is an excellent city to do all of that in. And more it's becoming important for your career that you supplement your coursework with research opportunities and internships, and you really kind of build your resume so that when you're ready to graduate, you can hit the ground running. And a final pro of UChicago is that it's definitely more intellectual than career-oriented. So if you compare it with a school like UPenn, for example, everyone at UPenn is gunning for opportunities that will help their career. And it's kind of this obsession. And while there are definitely some students at UChicago who are like that, the mentality of the school is much more about learning for the sake of learning. And it's just much more intellectual and academic. And it's more about kind of improving your critical thinking skills and your writing skills and learning about subjects that interest you just because they interest you, not necessarily because they're going to be a stepping stone to your career. And so, many universities are definitely veering towards that career orientation. And it can be refreshing to go to a place that just celebrates learning for the love of learning. What are some of the cons of UChicago? Well, the first con is that it's undeniably a grind school. And what I mean by that is that it's academically grueling. The coursework is really hard. You get a lot of homework. There's a lot of rampant grade deflation, which means that students who were used to getting straight A's in high school are now getting B's and C's for the first time. And it's also a place where if you go there, you can expect to spend most of your time studying in the library. It's just set up to be an academically rigorous education. And this kind of puts it on the level of some other schools like Princeton and Cornell and Swarthmore, which are really known for having a very demanding course load and really difficult grading. And it's the opposite from some of the other schools, for example, in the Ivy League, like Harvard and Yale, which famously give about 80% of the grades that they give out are either A's or A minuses. So this is a very different thing. At those other schools like Harvard and Yale, yes, coursework is important, but they don't want you spending all your time in the library. They want you out and about accomplishing things outside of class. University of Chicago is about, coursework is king. It's first and foremost about becoming really strong intellectually, and you have to prove it every day. A second con about UChicago is that the city of Chicago, and in particular the area surrounding campus, which is Hyde Park, is notoriously dangerous. There's a lot of crime there. And most students who go to this school, they actually love Chicago and they're comfortable with their environment. But it's undeniably a very dangerous city. There are always shootings around campus. There are muggings. There are sexual assaults. There are robberies. That stuff is not uncommon at all. And as a testament to that, UChicago employs one of the largest private police forces in the country with about 100 officers. So they do everything they can to make the campus itself safe. And most students actually report feeling safe on the UChicago campus. It's a beautiful campus, and within the confines, they feel safe. But once you step off campus at all, to get on public transportation, to go for a jog, to do anything else, you really have to be vigilant because it's a really dangerous area. A third con about University of Chicago is the weather. Winters here are brutal. They're cold and they're windy and they last a long time. So you have to know that you're signing up for really difficult weather and you just have to roll with it. And a final con of UChicago is it's not a place with a lot of school spirit. It's not a place with a strong sense of community. It's a place where you kind of have to make your own fun. And a lot of students here are very much free thinkers. They're individualists. They're not the type of students who would go support the big sport team anyway. But like UChicago, there's not a prominent sports scene and there's not a prominent social scene. So it's just one of those places where you know that you kind of have to make your own fun. How to get into UChicago? You really need to know that UChicago is distinct from a lot of other top tier schools in that they're truly looking for intellectual giants. They're truly looking for students who love learning for the sake of learning, who, as I mentioned before, who geek out over obscure academic subjects. And when you apply to UChicago, the supplemental essays you have to write for your application are very different from other schools. So you can't just copy and paste and change a few words. Their essay topics are long and they're kind of quirky. And a lot of students decide not to apply to the school because they don't want to write all those supplemental essays. They just realize it's going to take too much work. But I think the university does this on purpose because they really want to weed out students who don't truly want to go there. UChicago is a strong flavor. It's definitely not for everyone. And it definitely attracts a certain breed of student. And so when you write your application essays, you really want to think about showcasing yourself as someone who's a true intellectual giant, as someone who really loves academics for its own sake. And so you can have fun with those essays, you can geek out a little bit, but that will help you show them that you would fit in with that culture. The other way to boost your chances of getting into UChicago is to apply early decision. So the regular decision admission rate is about 6% or so, and historically the early decision rate is about 10 or 12%. Most recently, the school has stopped publicizing its data for early decision, but we estimate that it's about 10%, which means by applying early decision, you basically double your chances of getting in. Now, you should know that that's not as big an admissions boost as you get at some other schools, particularly those in the Ivy League, where by applying early decision, you triple or even quadruple your admissions odds. It's a very small boost, but it's a boost. And college admissions is a game of inches, and if you can boost your chances from 6% to 10 or 12%, it's worth doing if you know it's your first choice. And the other thing to know about UChicago is that it has the highest yield rate, perhaps of any college in the country. And the yield rate is the percentage of students who are accepted, who actually decide to enroll there. And it's higher than Yale, it's higher than Harvard, it's higher than Stanford. And you may wonder why that is. And it's because UChicago is so specific. It attracts such a specific breed of student that students don't just casually apply there thinking, oh, I'll just throw that on my list. Like they either really want to go there or they think that's not the place for me at all. And so typically the students who get in there, absolutely, that's where they want to go. So it's just something interesting to know. If you have any questions about this video or anything else, you can reach out to me directly. I'll put my information in the video description.